right, we will get started. My name is Helen Montgomery, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Chicago in 2022 Worldcon bid.
And my name is Dave McCarty, and this is my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl.
So Dave is going to share his screen while I do the presentation. And for those of you who have seen the Dave and Helen show before at Worldcon Q&As or SMOCCon Q&As, you're going to notice something really different. We have an actual PowerPoint. I believe this is the first one ever. So this is an important date. So let us get started. The first thing we would like to do, of course, is thank CoNZealand for hosting question time, and thank those of you who have taken time out of your day to attend the live version, and those of you who are watching this as a recording. So, all right, we will get started. We are bidding for Chicago in 2022. Our dates will be September 1st through 5th of 2022. That is Labor Day weekend in the United States. So we would be a Thursday through Monday convention, with Monday being a federal holiday. The membership rates are currently being finalized. What we can tell you right now is that we do plan to have an installment plan right away, and we do plan to offer a family membership of some sort. The details of those, as well as any other membership categories and rates, are still being discussed, and they'll be announced if we win. We have chosen a site for us. We will be going back to the Hyatt Regency Chicago. This is home to 4 prior Worldcons. And a fun fact for you, if we win, this will mean that the Hyatt will have hosted more Worldcons than any other city, let alone other venue. And when we told them that, they were absolutely thrilled and thought it was great. With the Hyatt, we would be a convention under one roof. We have one site, 2 hotel towers, and the convention center below, connecting them underground. The location is fantastic. We're in downtown Chicago. We're right by the Magnificent Mile, by the Riverwalk and the Loop. There are plenty of restaurants and shopping and things to do nearby. We would like to note, however, a couple changes to the hotel and some of their dining and drink options in the hotel. So if you can see here up on the top left in particular, since ChiCon 7, the Hyatt completely redesigned their lobby, as well as some other things in the hotel, like adding a bit more function space in places and that sort of thing. The new lobby features a lot of comfy seating and their new bar and restaurant, American Craft. Up on the right, top right, you can see Big Bar is still there. We know that's a fan favorite, and it's a question that we often get, is Big Bar still there? And it absolutely is. And we also have a new bar that we can go to. They have a new space called the Living Room, which is absolutely lovely. The Hyatt itself has 2,032 sleeping rooms. Of these, there are 123 suites. The suites will be used for evening hospitality, and there will also be some available for general reservations and use. And there are 98 ADA accessible rooms available in the Hyatt. Should we need overflow hotels for more sleeping rooms, there are numerous hotels nearby, and some of those are actually connected to the Hyatt via the underground pedway. So again, still basically under one roof. The rates that we have are $160 a night for single, double, triple, quad, plus tax. These are for your typical king, queen, double rooms. The suites, there are numerous types of suites, and they all have different pricing, which will be available should we win. Then we'll make sure that all of that gets out there. There are no additional fees other than the taxes. Breakfast is not included, but internet is. The internet in guest rooms is complimentary. For the convention center space, as we noted, it's all part of the same complex between the 2 towers of the hotel. So what you're seeing here on the top is the Riverside Exhibit Hall, and on the bottom you're seeing the Grand Ballroom, which is their largest ballroom space. They have a total of 240,000 square feet of conference space. The Riverside Exhibit Hall, which you saw, is their largest space at 70,000 square feet. This would be where we would have fixed exhibits, dealers, that sort of thing. The Grand Ballroom at 25,000 square feet is the largest ballroom space. That's going to be where our large events, Hugo's, Masquerade, opening and closing ceremonies, that sort of thing would go in there. What we did in 2012 is we had another space nearby for overflow seating for folks who were not able to get a seat in the Grand Ballroom. And we would certainly plan to do something like that in 2022 as well. As we noted, any evening socializing will be up in the suites. It's not going to be in any of the function space. We have arranged a corkage and forkage waiver for those events. Getting to Chicago in the Hyatt Regency is super easy, barely an inconvenience. We have 2 hotels, O'Hare and Midway. Also, Amtrak and Greyhound both have their terminals in downtown. From any of those places, you can easily get to downtown in the Hyatt via public trans. The Chicago Transit Authority runs the bus. PACE is our suburban bus system, and Metro is the regional train system. We've got full details on our FAQ that can be found on the CoNZealand website and also on our website under the About Us tab with full details on how to use those. So one of the questions that we get is, why Chicago? Why do we want to come to Chicago? And we have lots and lots of answers for you. And we're going to start with the city itself. So Condé Nast Traveler named Chicago the best big city in the US 3 years running. Time Out called us the world's best city for having it all. And Bon Appetit named us the restaurant city of the year in 2017. We frankly agree with every single one of those, and we fully expect more kudos coming. We're a great city. We have 77 unique and diverse neighborhoods, 2.5 million people. And the photo you're looking at right now is taken from the north side, up right around Edgewater or Rogers Park neighborhoods. This is at the very northern end of the city. You can see we're looking south towards downtown in the Loop. You can see the Hancock, Sears Tower. You can see Lakeshore Drive there. It is one of my 2 favorite drives in the United States. And if you come to Chicago, do take some time to run the whole thing up and down. And then you can also see our lakefront parks and beaches. For obvious reasons, Chicago is often called the city by the lake. We're also known by our official motto, which is City in a Garden. Without question, during the time that Worldcon would be held at the beginning of September, that is when our gardens are at their best. Here we're on the south side of Chicago. We're looking north towards the museum campus, which features the Field Museum of Natural History, the Shedd Aquarium, and the Adler Planetarium, up through Grant Park and Millennium Park, and into downtown and some of the harbors. So if you come to Worldcon, Dave, can you go back 1 slide, please? If you come to the Worldcon, the city and all of its gardens are really easily accessible to you from the Hyatt, which is in the middle of downtown. It's a really easy walk to places like Millennium Park and Navy Pier and the lakefront with all of its miles and miles of beachfront and bike paths. We'd like to highlight 2 things for you. One is the just over a mile long Riverwalk. This opened shortly after ChiCon 7, and it's expanded from what they started to have then. It's right outside the front doors of the Hyatts. There's cafes and park seating all along that path. And from there, you can also take the Chicago Architecture Foundation River Tour. And it is, I think, one of the best ways to see the city on a boat, on the river, seeing all of the architecture, hearing the history of how the city came to be, and it's a fabulous tour. And the entrance for that is also right outside from the Hyatt. And then if you have the opportunity, we encourage you to go a little bit farther afield. This is not a walking distance one, but find the new 606 Bloomingdale Trail. This is a 2.7 mile elevated park. What they did is they took a decommissioned freight train line that is elevated, and they turned it into a park for walking and biking and sitting, and it's absolutely lovely, and I think a very unique park. If you're a foodie, we've got you covered. We have a ton of restaurants, and honestly, I lived there for 24 years. I barely made a dent in the options that exist out there. So if you want Chicago hot dogs, if you want food trucks, stuffed pizza, if you want award-winning restaurants, including what some call the best restaurant in the world, Alinea, we've got it for you. It is an absolute restaurant and bar paradise. We are also a city that really likes to have a good time. We've got parades, we've got film festivals, music festivals, theater, dance, live music, and all of the sports. So you can find a ton of stuff to do when you're there. For example, during the Worldcon, if we have it, the Jazz Fest will be at Millennium Park, which is just 2 blocks away from the Hyatt, and it's free to attend. And it's one of my favorite music festivals actually in the city. Additionally, during Labor Day weekend, the sports that will be on are baseball, featuring both the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox, and soccer with the Chicago Fire. And also, I believe, the Red Stars, which is the women's team. I believe their season is still going at that point. And what we did in 2012 was organize an outing for fans to go see a Cubs game at Wrigley Field. And so certainly we will take a look at the schedules for those teams and see what we could do in 2022. If none of that appeals and you're a museum junkie, we are your town. We have 67 museums, at least, in the city. The ones that are listed here, with the exception of the Museum of Science and Industry, all of those museums are walkable from the Hyatt. Some might be a bit of a long walk, but they are walkable. The Museum of Science and Industry, you have to go. It is a fanish paradise. It's the best museum ever. We have a U-boat. We have a giant airplane you can walk through, a massive model train. It's just absolutely fantastic. And I'd also like to highlight the Adler Planetarium. So in 2012, for our first night for ChiCon 7, we rented out the Adler, we bussed our attendees down to the Adler, and we had the run of the place to ourselves for our first night of the convention, and it was absolutely wonderful. So in terms of moving from the city itself to our community, we have a really strong, really large Spanish community in Chicago. We've got all of your fandoms covered. We're working hard to make sure that they're all represented and included at Chicago in 2022. We have science fiction conventions, including WindyCon and Capricorn. Those are held in November and February, respectively. And then we also have conventions for anime, for furries, for Doctor Who, for gaming, for comics, you name it, we have it. We'd like to do a shout out to our newest convention in Chicago, WakandaCon, which is a celebration of Marvel's Black Panther. In terms of prior Worldcons, we've done 7 of them. So we've got some experience, and we've enjoyed doing it enough that we would really like to do an 8th, and that is what we are bidding for. So if we win and we become the 8th Worldcon in Chicago, we'll have a lot of planning that's already started. If we win, I will be the convention chair. I'd like to take a moment to thank my bid committee for their vote of confidence in me. I'm really excited and looking forward to what we might be able to accomplish. We currently are working on getting our guests of honor in place. We're recruiting staff. We are finalizing our code of conduct, starting a budget. And we are also working on our website, which would launch if we win. So right after the announcements from site selection, if we've won, we would be launching that. I've been recruiting some prospective committee members, starting with my chair's advisors. I have someone who I think is one of the world's best convention planners and all-around fabulous retired lady. And I also have 3 former Worldcon chairs. So thank you to Bobby and James and Colin and Dave for agreeing to be there to help me out. We have several positions and divisions already headed up: artistic director, facilities, finance, member services, programming, publications, and WISFIS. Thanks to all of you for coming on board. For those of you who are familiar with Worldcon structure, you're going to note there's a couple of divisions that aren't currently staffed, things like promotions, exhibits, events, hospitality, those kinds of things. If you're interested, by all means, let me know. Finally, we'd like to give a couple of thank yous to our bid committee and bid volunteers. We started talking about bidding for 22 at the end of ChiCon 7 in 2012. Many of you have started supporting us right then. You've been with us all along the way, culminating in the official launch in 2018 and these 2 years of bidding. So thank you for all of your work. Thank you for all of the support over these last 8 years. We absolutely could not have done it without you. Thank you to CoNZealand for hosting site selection this year under some really difficult circumstances. And again, thank you for hosting this question time. We'd also like to thank Choose Chicago, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau. A particular shout out to our representative there, Monica, who's amazing. Thank the Hyatt Regency Chicago, especially our team there of Sarah, Matthew, and Andrea. Off-World Designs for the creation of our logo and our merchandise. You can still buy our t-shirts if you would like at the Off-World Designs website. And also Eek Designs for further graphic design work and a lot of the design work that we're going to have going forward. So with that, Please do check us out online since you aren't going to be able to see us in person. We have our website. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. If you have questions, if you want to volunteer, if you just want to say hello, you can also shoot us an email, info@chicagoworldconvid.org. And with that, I will say thank you, and we'll be answering questions after the presentation from Jeddah.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you very much, Dave. We will now pass over to the people from Jeddah. It's very important for everyone to realize that all questions that are not answered by typing will be answered afterwards. So if you had a question, don't get carried away. And over to Jeddah.
Thank you very much. I think it's going to be a hard follow-up with Chicago. After all, they have been hosting this for 7 times. So I'll just get into my presentation. And starting with Chicago hosting 7 times, we think it's a bit too much. Like everybody, we're all part of this Worldcon, and we all love the fantasy and science fiction genre. And the fantasy and science fiction genre just travels across so many timelines, space, dimension, colonies, species, myths, theories, and everything in between. And yet, the Worldcon, which is the biggest gathering of enthusiasts of such work, has almost always been in Western countries, with the exception, Western cultured countries, with the exception of Japan. So we think it's time to start expanding Worldcon's horizon and explore new cultures that would bring something new to the table and show the Worldcon community something from a very different perspective. And with that, so why go to Arabia? Arabia is the land where the 1001 Nights started. That was almost 1001 years ago. And at that time, you would have found scholars, scientists, wizards, and alchemists all working together and somehow managed to lay a foundation of almost all the technology and the science that we have today, from algebra, astronomy, chemistry. Of course, they built on everything that existed before, but because of its geographical location, it's a melting pot of cultures from all over the world. It created something very unique. So we want to host the Worldcon here in Arabia, where it's somewhere between the East and the West, where we can join back the global science fiction and fantasy movement into something really interesting. My colleague, Mohammed, will take on from here.
Thank you, Yasser. Hello, everybody. My name is Mohammed Al-Bakri, and I'm part of the Jedi Council for the JediCon bid. I would like to continue where Yasser left off and talk to you about why choose Saudi. In the past, if you had no business or religious obligations, chances are you never visited Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a vast kingdom, roughly 2/3 of the size of Western Europe, and recently has decided to change or rescind some of its policies and be open to the rest of the world. Can I have the next slide, please, Yasser? Saudi is rapidly changing these days, becoming more open and welcoming to other cultures in an effort to be more progressive under its 2030 vision. In the past few years, a lot of the old regulations have been rescinded, easing a lot of the social limitations that kept it off of the world sci-fi stage. Can I have the next slide, please, Yasser? Saudi is considered the heart of Arabia, or the Islamic nation, and the old world. It combines a plethora of ancient history, diverse geographical locations, rich heritage sites, 5 of which are UNESCO registered sites, and a fast-paced race towards the future through the conception and building of modernized cities, some in the size of small countries, and launching game-changing mega projects. Why choose the city of Jeddah? Due to the fact that Jeddah has stood as the gateway to the holy city of Mecca for over 15 centuries, it has become a melting pot of cultures that you would not see anywhere else in the world. Jeddah citizens believe that the name Jeddah which means grandmother in Arabic, refers to Eve, who is buried here in Jeddah. Next slide, please. The diversity we enjoy here in Jeddah is one of the main reasons for the passion that is geared towards arts, entertainment, and of course, science fiction. A few years back, Jeddah acted as a launching point for a sci-fi movement in the region. And today, several of all-time best sci-fi sellers are writers originating from Jeddah. Next, Yasser. Another reason why you would choose Jeddah is the diverse and there's a multitude of things you can do besides the science fiction scene. Even if your travel plans do not include exploring other cities in the kingdom, Jeddah has enough attractions to keep your itinerary busy. After you visit the UNESCO-registered historical Jeddah site, you can take in the art located outdoors along its 30-kilometer corniche. You can take a selfie with the world's highest fountain. You can have some time left to haggle at the old markets, or the souk as we call it. You can go hiking, visit one of its many metropolitan malls, or even watch a sci-fi movie in one of our brand new cinemas. Or as I can personally attest, you can go diving in perhaps the richest underwater diving site in the world. And with that, I will hand over back to Yasser.
Okay. The venue will be hosting this event, hopefully, if we win, is King Faisal Conference Center that is located at the center of King Abdulaziz University's campus. It has a large auditorium that could seat about 2,000 people. It has a couple of other smaller auditoriums, several lecture rooms within the space itself. But because within the university, we will also be able to use one of the lecturing buildings right beside the conference center to be able to host a lot of talks at the same time. Additionally, just across the street from the conference center, there's a sports tent that looks pretty interestingly futuristic yet Arabian as a tent. It has a huge space inside where we are planning to be hosting the art galleries and the dealer space. So what we are thinking of doing with our vision with the with JeddahCon is to emphasize on world at Worldcon, right? To balance the representation of different cultures and cultural aspects within the programming of the Worldcon, to have people like most Worldcons that I've attended. Yes, there's a clear effort to show the Worldcon community parts of other cultures and their contribution to science fiction, but the real major focus across the con is usually on Western science fiction. We want to try to change that. We want to have talks both in Arabic and English in our programming. We're going to have live volunteers doing live translation and interpretation. Hopefully, if we can find volunteers, if any of you would love to volunteer to interpret to other languages, that would be also great. And we will have, with our guests of honors, we know traditionally most Worldcons invite one guest of honor in every category. We're thinking of inviting more than one from different cultures to represent the real world community of science fiction. So part of our setup, even before the whole issue of COVID-19 appeared, we were already thinking of picking up to the next level, and unluckily for New Zealand, or luckily for them, they already had to do that with COVID-19. We were planning already to have full broadcast for all our programming items online for all the members to watch, and hopefully record all of them as well with all the translation audio tracks as well, so that they can enjoy watching it later. I mean, one of the real big things that I usually regret when I attend Worldcons is you can only attend so much of the program while losing a lot of the rest. And we wanted to make sure that everything that happens at this Worldcon is available to all the members for as long as we can keep that server. Additionally, we are working with the Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Tourism to develop special tours before and after JeddahCon for attendees to be able to visit some of the historical and cultural sites in Saudi Arabia outside Jeddah. And I think this is going to be one of the most exciting aspects because, as we said at the beginning, a lot of Arabia, specifically a lot of Saudi Arabia, has not really been explored by a lot of people from outside the region. And I think it's an exciting time where we are opening up and bringing you guys to see all of these amazing historical sites that we have. The Jeddah High Council, I am the Master of the Order, the head of the Jeddah Council, Yasser Bahjat. We have other 8 members that are amazing experts in their specific fields. Unfortunately, we have never been part of any Worldcons before, so we have attended a few, but it's, as I was told before the session, I guess, gonna learn on the job. But we would like to assure you that if you vote for us, everyone on this council has deep experience in managing different sizes of events of all kind and magnitude. And hopefully, if you vote for us, we'll see you in JeddahCon in Jeddah. Hopefully, 2022, May the 4th, will be with you. That's our date that we set for our event, for so many different reasons that we can get into if we get a question on that. Thank you. I yield my time.
Okay. Randy, do you want to start with some of the pre-questions from beforehand?
Yes. All right, presenters, and thank both of the groups for the fine presentations. The first question is, will female members of the convention be treated differently than male members? And the second part will be, is particular clothing going to have to be worn based on gender? And how will cisgendered individuals be treated? And I think, did we say Chicago's going to answer that first?
Sure. There shouldn't be any difference as far as gender. We welcome anybody, cisgendered, transgendered, doesn't matter. There is no dress code of any kind, other than, of course, you know, it's a hotel in the middle of summer, so there's going to be air conditioning. But beyond that, there really shouldn't be anything. We do already have, you know, in our contract the clause that people might be wearing some funky costumes, and if there's any concerns or anything, the hotel knows to come to us first.
Very good.
For us, there isn't really any difference in treatment for gender, but there is, regarding clothing, there is a Saudi law, there's called the Decency Act or Decency Law in Saudi. We can share a link, that official site, on that dress code.
That'd be great.
Randy, I'm going to interrupt with a quick question for Jeddah before it gets away from us, because it was put into the chat rather than into the Q&A. Somebody has asked why May 4th, aside from the obvious Star Wars reference.
Okay, so because of the Star Wars reference was the cherry on the top. The Star Wars reference was nice to link to our city name Jeddah. But for May the 4th specifically, there's a few reasons. Number one, we think September is going to be very hot in Saudi, and it's going to be hard for people to really enjoy exploring the city or enjoy anything outside the convention center. I mean, right now it's already the 27th of June, and we're still not really hitting the peak of heat, and it's been above 50-something degrees Celsius for the past couple of days. I'm not sure what Fahrenheit that would be, but that would be, it's a crazy heat.
Way hotter than most of us know about.
Yeah. The second thing is because of timing. That time specifically, I mean, in Saudi we have different holiday structures. We usually use a lunar year. So that year specifically, on that date, it will be Eid al-Fitr, which is the holiday after Ramadan fasting. Therefore, almost everybody would be on official vacation in Saudi. So a lot of people in Saudi and in the region will be able to attend. Because it's an official vacation, we will be able to use all the facilities of the university. Otherwise, in normal days, We would not be able to use anything outside the conference center, which is going to limit the amount of programming we can do. So because of, and again, because it's an official holiday and it's one of the most important aspects culturally here in Saudi, Eid al-Fitr, there's going to be a lot of activities outside the conference itself that is going to expose the people coming from outside Saudi to our culture in a very festive period for Jeddah.
And Randy, next question.
All right, this is for Jeddah specifically. How do you think JeddahCon will affect science fiction and fantasy in the region as a whole, not just Saudi Arabia, but?
Okay, so science fiction in Arabia sort of died off historically for a period of time. It started kind of picking up in the mid to late 80s, but it really did not self-identify as a genre. So there were some authors, Egyptian authors specifically, that were writing science fiction, but they never self-identified as science fiction. Now with the new generation and the new wave that started sort of like a decade ago, there's a new movement of producing or exporting our culture through science fiction and through fantasy. And this movement is really building up. And I think having the Worldcon coming to the region would bring more attention to the genre and bring much more interest to the genre from all over, from investors, from taking it seriously by the government. There has been a few interesting science fiction movies that are shot in the region, not in Saudi, but you had like The Martian that was shot in Jordan. You had Star Wars, huge parts of that was shot, Star Wars and Star Trek, huge parts of that were shot in the UAE. But still, actually the first ever science fiction TV show in Arabic was just released this year. So that would give you an idea of how fresh of a market contemporary science fiction is in Arabia. And we believe that bringing a Worldcon here is going to bring in a lot of excitement to export more of that to the rest of the world.
I'm going to ask a question out of the Q&A on the grounds that we've had two for Jeddah and it's time to give some to Chicago. And I have two for Chicago. The first one is, they remember hearing about difficulties CoNZealand had with the staff of the Hyatt, specifically with the contract. How have those been resolved to bring Worldcon business back to them?
Okay, so as the chair of CoNZealand, I'll speak to that. Because I know that we did a couple panels at SMOFCons talking about some problems that we had that were primarily problems between the hotel and the convention runners. It really wasn't things so much that affected the attendees. And, you know, when we got down to it in this pass through, we sort of had some blunt talks with the hotel about things and how they went and what didn't work so well for us. And in the middle of the conversation, the hotel, you know, actually took ownership of exactly what went wrong and explained it to our satisfaction. We had a meeting of the minds about what the failure was, and the failure was not on our side. The thing that we wanted to get out of this is because the point of failure was between us and our convention service manager, which, if people who have run conventions before know, the CSM is your angel to get all of your stuff done. And we had a poor relationship with our CSM. So we have already been assigned a CSM. We've already met him. His name is Matthew, and he is brilliant. He's already a part of the community. He grew up in SCA. He gets us. He was doing research on us and asking about Filk and wanted to know, you know, there were a few terms that we used that he didn't understand. He needed to know what BarCon was because it sounded interesting. So we're very excited to be working with Matthew. We think that that really addresses the problems that we had the last time through, and we don't expect anything like that this time through.
And Matthew is really excited to work with us. So normally the way it works is, you know, emails go out to all the CSMs from sales saying, these are the things that might be coming. And they send an email back to their guys saying, oh, I'm interested in blah, 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 blah. And Matthew told us that he did not follow that procedure. He instead got up and he walked into his boss's office and he says, Chicago in 2022 Worldcon, that's mine. I got that. So he was there working the front desk in 2012 and saw like the authors coming through and stuff and was just apparently like, oh my God, That's George R. R. Martin. So he is very much one of us and is super excited to work with us.
Okay, we have a second question for Chicago, and that is that last time there were numerous access issues. What has the hotel done to fix them?
Okay,
Do you want to take that, or do you want me to take it?
I'd like to take it first and you clean up
Okay.
if I miss something. So the main thing the hotel's done to address it is that they've actually taken all of their function space that's not ADA accessible out of circulation for us and have replaced it with other things. They've moved their offices into the non-ADA accessible areas. They're no longer function rooms, and we've gotten other function rooms in trade-off that are, including some brand new function room pods that they've added where the health club used to be. And it's lots of exciting space that's easy to get to. There is, however, one remaining accessibility choke point that we can't do much about except try to plan better, which is from the attendee point of view, getting down into the exhibit hall, there's limitations on elevators. We'll have to work with our team of planners to make sure that we've got that running as efficiently as we can for the folks that need it. That's the one ADA choke point that we're left with in the Hyatt, but otherwise at 100 ADA sleeping rooms and all of the function space being ADA compatible, we think we're about as good as we can be.
So one of the things that we talked about a lot with the ADA stuff amongst the big committee, and one of the reasons we actually decided on the Hyatt for this, no matter where we go in Chicago, there's going to be ADA issues, right? There will be choke points. With the Hyatt, at least most of those are already known to us, which means it's going to be easier to plan for. We've spoken a lot with the Hyatt about it. We've said accessibility is one of the really big issues. And one of the things that we're going to have on day one on the website, should we win, is a place where folks can actually email us and say, these were the access issues that I had. These were access issues that I found. So that we can start planning for them immediately for any of the ones that we've missed. We've got our list from last time, but we want folks to be able to tell us in case we've missed any.
I think this is a sufficiently important subject, and we've got another question on the Q&A, and I think the next question for Jeddah was also about accessibility. So the Q&A is asking how many rooms. What's the previous questions on the ADA there?
Well, there was a both question coming up for each side about handling accessibilities for members with mobility limitations. If I'm going to say, I imagine the questioner's intent is not only handicap access rooms and movement within the facility, but the ability to rent electrical mobile chairs that people aren't flying with. You need to rent in the city you get to. So what's going to be the availability of assistance like that for handicap access? Jeddah, you want to answer that? In Chicago, finish up? Or
So the hotels we're working with, most of their rooms are accessible for handicaps. However, not all of the rooms are equipped for handling handicaps, for example, in the bathrooms or whatnot, but a lot of the rooms are either so legally, they're only required to have a certain amount of such rooms. But additionally to those, a lot of the rooms they have sort of have workarounds, but they're not officially recognized by the authorities as fully accessible. So we could say about 10% of the rooms that we have available would be fairly accessible for disabilities. As for rental of equipment on site, we are already working with a few companies that will be providing all the chairs that will hopefully will be needed on site, but we're still not sure if they will be allowing us to rent them out for people outside the conference itself. We're trying to figure out a way to get them to also allow us to rent them out to our guests to be able to use and tour the city, but we're not still sure on that.
Chicago, you want to Bobby's question, any other mobility you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, we'll have rental options for Mobies and wheelchairs and that sort of thing. My guess is that we would have sort of a pre-rental period so folks could definitely reserve them to make sure that we have enough, and then we'll have extras on site for the last minute ones.
Very good. Do you want one out of the Q&A, Rob, or do you want me to keep heading down the list here?
Why don't you go to the next both?
The next both is, what online virtual content do you intend to include, even if you are going to be hosting an in-person convention, which we hope is possible at that point in time?
So we haven't, we haven't totally decided on that. I imagine that there will be a pretty strong virtual component no matter what's going on as far as pandemic and whatnot. But, in 2012, one of the things we did is we did co-programming with DragonCon. So we had, some panelists who were in Atlanta in a room with an audience, and in Chicago, panelists with an audience, and we sort of Skyped them together. So we're very used to doing that kind of virtual stuff. And so nothing specific is planned, but it's definitely on our radar, and we're going to be watching carefully and seeing what we can do.
So for us, our plan was that we're trying to be able to broadcast all the sessions that we're going to have online live for the members. So whether you're a member that actually is in Jeddah and just wants to hang out, still was late getting out of the hotel and wants to catch up on one of the sessions, or we will have special memberships for people who just want to attend online. Those sessions will either be full video streaming, or the least we're going to do is audio streaming. I mean, if we can't do all the sessions pure video streaming, we're definitely going to have them as audio. Additionally, the platform we're going to be using for live interpretation is also going to be live, has a live feed of all the languages, translations for the sessions in both languages. On top of that, everything that we will broadcast online is also going to be recorded and available on our website in a section special for members, that they can go in anytime after the sessions. Hopefully within a couple of days they will be on the site, and then people can go in and watch them anytime they want. And we'll try to keep those memberships online for as long as we can hold the server, hopefully for at least 10 years. Additionally, we're going to have live feeds from all the public spaces in the conference. So the art gallery, the dealers' rooms, any other public spaces that we will have, we're going to have live feeds on there so that attendees can interact with online attendees.
I'm looking at a couple of the questions, and I think they can kind of be combined a tiny bit. So I'm going to try and do that because I don't want us to run over and miss a chance to answer a question. Questions include what we'll call risks to people within the framework of getting around, etc. So let me try and phrase this in a way that makes sense. Does either convention believe there will be any difficulty for any member to attend, dependent upon their nationality, race, sexual preference, sexuality, or their actual current status together with a partner or with someone else? What kind of restrictions do either convention foresee being possible? And I do say this is important because I know a few people who can't actually currently travel to the US.
In general, I would really like to say there shouldn't be any. We have an election coming up in November. The results of that election will have a big impact on the actual answer to the question. So it's kind of hard to predict with that. Additionally, with the pandemic and people being able to cross borders and whatnot, again, right now that there's just so much influx. As I said, generally speaking, the answer should be there shouldn't be a problem. But I think we'll have a better answer around SMOFCon this year in December.
Jeddah.
So for us, the first answer to that is, again, what I mentioned during the presentation. There's a public decency law in Saudi. So there's sort of a dress code that people need to abide by, a minimum dress code that they need to abide by. And if people are within that dress code, we do not anticipate any issues for anyone. Now, again, part of that public decency law is public show of affection and different other aspects of this. So yeah, there are a little bit, I mean, yes, Saudi Arabia has opened up, but there's still some kind of modesty levels that are expected in Saudi that you might not expect in most of the world.
Okay. What part of that question was also about people who, for example, I have a friend who's changed sex. He's planning on attending Worldcons in future. He is likely to bring his girlfriend, who actually technically is the same sex as he started out as, but is no longer, obviously. Is there going to be any problem for this sort of issue? And it actually kind of does apply to Washington if you still have the gentleman in orange, because he doesn't like these people.
So if you're addressing the question to Jeddah, right now the policy, again, there's a difference between what is happening and what actually goes on. So basically, when you apply for a visa or come in, nobody asks those kind of questions. So unless you're actually going out of your way to make a scene, nothing happens. Hotels do not ask about any official relationship between people who are staying together in the same room. Okay, there is an expectancy, but there is no requirement to present this information. So unless someone gets out of their way to try to make a statement or make an issue of it, it should not be a problem.
Helen.
Chicago doesn't care. Regardless of what's going on in Washington, we've got everybody in Chicago. It's not an issue.
Okay.
Kind of a follow-up on that is if someone's doing cosplay and they're wearing a costume. I'm out there at the conference running around all day. That's all right. But then my friends, we all want to run into town to dinner. If I'm dressed up like Mickey Mouse or Astro Boy or any of that, is that going to, if I'm in my Jedi robes with my lightsaber, can I go into the city or?
I'm already in my Jedi robes. Yeah, I mean,
they're very comfortable in the heat, I know.
So you won't, I mean, generally speaking, again, as long as you're adhering to the public decency laws in Saudi Arabia, nobody's going to bother you because you're dressed up funny. So if you're dressed up like Mickey Mouse or like a Jedi or whatever, as long that you are abiding by the public decency laws, you should not face any issues.
What
Okay,
What happens to somebody who's not permitted to enter Saudi Arabia by their own country? Is there anything they can do about that?
So as we said, we're going to be broadcasting everything online. So whether you are not allowed or whether you cannot get a visa, like, I mean, last year in Dublin, half of my panels were almost canceled because my co-panelists were not able to get a visa to Dublin. But we won't have that issue because we would be able to do the live streaming to those people and they'll still be able to attend through a different level of membership, which would be just for them to come in online.
Okay. And obviously, from what you've said, cosplay, we're looking at properly covered people. Actually, there's been at least one U.S. state that got really uppity about people who were not quite fully covered. So it's not an unknown of thing.
Well, I mean, we had Comic-Con happened in Jeddah like 3 years ago. So we had cosplay in Comic-Con in Jeddah. We had Comic-Con in Riyadh. So people are getting used to the concept of cosplay. But again, it's an Islamic country. There are certain, I wouldn't, it's not like as complicated or as strict as most people think, but still there is a public decency law that people need to adhere by.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it, Yasser. There's a question around restaurants and public places with respect to how safe it is for single female presenting people to enter restaurants on their own. And I think that can depend on the time of day in some parts of the world, such as Chicago. Ages and ages ago in '82, it was a problem, but that was a long time ago.
I go to restaurants routinely by myself when I'm in town, so no worries.
Okay.
Jeddah
Yes.
is a very safe place. Like, I mean, no one, male, female, or whatever, child would really have any kind of fear going out, even at 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. It's
Much
one
like
of the
Nippon was.
I'm sorry?
Much like Nippon was. Very safe place.
Like Jeddah is one of the safest cities. I mean, generally Saudi Arabia, crime rates in Saudi Arabia are way lower than most of the world.
Another
What is there
question
any
is for both.
Oops.
And
I just want to follow up on that one, Robbie.
yep.
Is there any restriction, like if women are going into a restaurant, that, people here like they've got to sit in a certain section, or
I
if
mean,
it's a mixed group of sexes, any problem?
I'm not sure. Until recently, it was public for everybody, and I think right now that some other restaurants are allowed to keep that. What I'm going to explain is basically there is what they call the family section, which basically females or so only females can go there, or males accompanied with females can go in there, and then there's the single section where only male guys can go there. But those laws have been lifted a while back, but still some restaurants, because of the infrastructure, the way they built the restaurant, it's still structured that way. But again, if that issue occurs for some restaurants, it's going to happen to the guys, not to the gals.
Okay.
So.
And the restriction's been lifted, so in some restaurants, it's open seating, just like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but because some of the restaurants are still built on the old style, and it's going to cost them a lot to change it up, so they still have that structure.
The question that comes up next is public transport in each area. We'll start with Chicago. How easy is it to get around if somebody decides on a hostel in the outskirts, for example?
It's super easy, and even if you're on the outskirts, we have a ton of information on our FAQ detailing like getting to downtown from the airports and from Amtrak and stuff. You have the L, which goes to most places, huge amounts of buses. It's all good. You can get many people live in Chicago without cars.
Okay. For Jeddah, we almost have no actual public transportation. We're not sure, maybe by 2022 that would change, but I don't think so. The main public transport that we have in Jeddah is a train that goes from Mecca all the way to the Medina, but that same train can be used to come from the airport to the station that's just next to our venue. Additionally, we will be having shuttles that are going back and forth between all the hotels that we will have deals with. Some of them are about 10-15 minutes drive from the conference center. The closest would be about 5-minute drive, but they will all have shuttles going back and forth to help members go back and forth between those hotels. Additionally, I mean, in this day and age with Uber and every other app that is out there, moving around is very easy through apps and clicks. And we're working to come up with a deal with Uber or Kareem, the local version of Uber, to have special rates for our members.
Okay, thank you. We still have, what's the phrase I'm looking for? There's a lot of concern from everybody, and it's applying to both of the conventions. It's about freedom of expression for LGBTQ plus attendees and for people who've transitioned. What kind of legal issues, what kind of problems might these people face? What should they consider their behavior to be in order to not find themselves in trouble? For example, myself and John, we're married. However, John is John Harold and I'm Robbie Bourget because I can't be bothered to change my passport yet again. And just to not put too fine a point on it, I have been called young man so often I've gotten tired of it. So sometimes they think we're two guys going into the same room together, and other times they think we're not married and all sorts of stuff. So these are issues that occasionally can come up. I'm going to ask Chicago, how are you going to assure people that they don't need to worry about this sort of stuff?
So legally, there's no issues. We do have, as part of, part of our code of conduct is about, is anti-harassment. And, it's also about, people who are, for example, for folks who are trans, being deliberately misgendered and that kind of thing. We're definitely putting things about that in our code of conduct. And there will be a reporting process if they experience any issues at the convention itself, which hopefully they will not. Legally and in the city of Chicago, again, there's really nothing. We have a thriving LGBT community up in Boys Town and Andersonville, and I don't really have anything else to add, I don't think. But if people have some really specific questions or anything like that, by all means, ping me.
For us, first regarding the hotel accommodations, again, it's the same answer. No one is going to ask what is the relationship between the people who are staying in the same room together. And unless there is some kind of actual fuss that happened, this should not be an issue. As for freedom of expression, regarding LGBTQ specifically, they are not recognized in Saudi Arabia, and therefore we would say don't show, don't tell. I mean, as long as you're abiding by the public decency laws, there should not be any issue.
Will you be posting the public decency laws on your website?
It's actually, we can send the link. It's on an official website, so we'll just share the official website link for the public, the government official site that states those laws.
I've got a follow-up related to public decency, which I think I get kind of is really about exposure and being dressed, but what about public displays of affection? Robbie and I decide to make out, now her husband would be upset, but is that going to be okay?
No, so yeah, that's part of the public decency law where, again, a public show of affection is not acceptable.
No matter same sex, opposite sex, just no public displays of affection. Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate that because it helps people to understand the area. Everybody's areas are different. We're currently 3 minutes past our time.
No, we're not.
Is there anything we haven't answered?
Yeah, we started 5 late, so.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
right.
That's why I'm not bothered. But I'm just asking, is there anything we haven't answered that somebody feels we must answer?
Well, and on the access issue, and we covered it for a lot of the race, sex, and stuff like that. I'm not sure why we hit national origin. If I've been to Israel and have an Israeli stamp in my passport, will that cause any difficulty on entrance?
I really don't know. I have no clue. I mean, I'm not, but I don't expect it should. I don't expect it should, but I cannot positively answer that question. I don't work in the government, so.
For everyone's information, actually, this happened to John. He went to Saudi Arabia on business and had trouble entering the U.S. until he finally got a new passport. So it can work both ways.
Yeah, no, it can work both. Then the related question is, and of course, under the current American administration, there's a number of the Islamic countries that have bans on coming here. And in fact, bans have broadened quite widely under knucklehead Trump. But are there any known national origins that would keep, I see you smiling, Thamer, hope for us in November that we get a change. Is there any national origin though? Can Israelis go, or is there any nation